Most people wander through life reacting to every event, every opinion, and every impulse that crosses their path. They are surrounded by noise, distractions, and information. Yet clarity escapes them. But to think clearly is a rare gift, but it's not a gift we are born with. It's a skill, a discipline, a practice that must be trained, refined, and strengthened every single day. The human mind is the most powerful instrument in existence, yet without training it becomes our greatest enemy. It must be directed with purpose, or it will direct us toward confusion and mediocrity. The first step to clear thinking is to understand that your mind is a servant, not a master. It will follow the orders you give it. Most people never issue clear instructions. They allow worry, fear, and other people's opinions to steer their thoughts. But when you take command of your mind, when you begin to decide consciously what deserves your attention and what does not, you begin to experience the calm power of true mental clarity. Every great thinker, every inventor, every leader throughout history has known this truth, that the mind must be tamed before it can be trusted to lead. Clarity begins in stillness. A mind constantly bombarded by distractions cannot produce wise or creative ideas. Just as muddy water settles when left undisturbed, so too does the mind become clear when allowed moments of silence and reflection. Spend time alone with your thoughts. Detach from noise, from screens, from endless chatter. Let your mind rest, and you will discover that your best answers, your most powerful ideas, and your greatest strength rise from within, not from the outside world. What you feed your mind determines the quality of your thinking. You cannot expect clear, intelligent thoughts if you constantly consume confusion, negativity, and nonsense. The books you read, the people you listen to, the conversations you engage in, these are the nutrients of your mind. Feed it truth, wisdom, and inspiration, and you will find that your decisions become sharper, your direction more certain, and your understanding deeper. A clear mind begins with clean input. To think clearly, you must also learn to question your own thoughts. Every emotion, every assumption, every conclusion must be examined. Ask yourself, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this leading me toward the life I want? The undisciplined mind accepts everything it feels as fact, but the trained mind challenges its own thinking. Clarity is not found in certainty, it's found in the willingness to question and refine. Focus is the next great secret of clear thinking. In a world that pulls your attention in 1,000 directions, the ability to focus on one thing deeply is a superpower. Clarity does not come from doing more. It comes from cutting away what doesn't matter, eliminate the unnecessary. Simplify your goals. Decide what truly deserves your energy and let the rest fall away. A focused mind sees opportunity where others see noise. Finally, remember that clear thinking is not a one-time achievement. It's a lifelong discipline. Just as the body grows strong through regular exercise, the mind grows sharp through consistent reflection and awareness. Set aside moments each day to observe your thoughts, to correct them, and to replace confusion with order. Over time, you will notice a profound shift. The noise will fade, the fog will lift, and your path will stand before you, clear, confident, and full of purpose. The mind is the most remarkable tool ever given to us, yet most people never learn how to use it properly. They let it run wild, reacting to every situation, drifting from one thought to another without direction or control. To train the mind to think clearly, one must first realize that the mind is not the master. It is the servant. It was designed to obey your commands, to carry out your intentions, and to create the life you imagine. But when you fail to take control, it begins to control you. The mind can be a loyal ally or a ruthless enemy depending on who holds the reins. If you do not command it, it will command you. That is why discipline of thought is the foundation of all achievement and the source of every great life. Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through the human mind, most of them uninvited. They come from the environment, from memories, from fears, from habits, and unless you are alert, you begin to mistake them for your own deliberate thinking. This is where confusion begins. The untrained mind reacts instead of responding, worries instead of plans, doubts instead of trusts. It allows external circumstances to dictate internal emotions. But the trained mind, the mind that knows its role as a servant, operates differently. It listens for instruction. It focuses on direction. It refuses to dwell on thoughts that serve no purpose. When the mind is under your control, you no longer become a victim of passing moods or outside noise. You become steady, deliberate, and calm, qualities that are the hallmarks of true intelligence. Training the mind begins with awareness. Before you can control your thoughts, you must first become conscious of them. Pay attention to the patterns that dominate your inner world. Notice what you think about when you are alone, what kind of words you use to describe your day, what emotions rise when you face uncertainty. These small observations reveal the current programming of your mind. And until you change that programming, your life will continue to produce the same results. The truth is that everything begins in thought. Every success, every failure, every act of courage or fear, all are born first in the mind. If you want to change your life, you must change the way you think. If you want clear results, you must have clear thoughts. Once awareness is developed, discipline must follow. The mind must be taught what to think about, just as a muscle must be trained to lift weight. When a negative thought appears, do not entertain it. Replace it with a positive one. When confusion tries to settle in, ask yourself what facts you truly know. When fear begins to whisper its doubts, speak to it with reason. This process is slow, but every time you consciously direct your mind, you strengthen its obedience. Over time, it begins to follow your command naturally, just as an instrument responds effortlessly in the hands of a skilled musician. Most people fail to develop this ability because they underestimate its importance. They want immediate results, yet they spend no time mastering the instrument that creates all results. Their mind. To think clearly, you must separate yourself from your thoughts long enough to see them for what they are, tools. You can pick them up, use them, and put them down at will. They are not you, they are your instruments of creation. A carpenter doesn't confuse himself with his hammer, nor does a writer confuse himself with his pen. In the same way, you must not confuse yourself with your thoughts. You are the thinker, the one who decides which thoughts deserve attention and which should be discarded. Once you begin to see your mind this way, you will notice a remarkable shift in power. You will no longer be dragged by impulses or consumed by worry. You will think, not react. You will decide, not drift. Clear thinking is not achieved by force but by direction. When you give your mind a clear purpose, it organizes itself around that purpose. The scattered energy that once created confusion becomes concentrated power. That is why setting clear goals is so essential. A goal gives the mind a target to serve. Without it, it has no compass, no structure, no aim. It begins to wander, producing thoughts without value or clarity. The moment you decide what you want, the mind starts to work in harmony with that decision. It searches for ideas, solutions, and insights that align with your aim. It stops producing noise and starts creating order. The mind is the greatest servant you will ever have. When you learn to guide it, to instruct it with precision and discipline, it will carry you toward any destiny you choose. When you neglect it, it becomes restless, scattered, and confused, turning against its owner. The difference between success and failure, peace and anxiety, clarity and chaos lies entirely in who is in control, you or your thoughts. The mind was never meant to lead, it was meant to serve. Once you understand this and live by it, you begin to experience the calm authority that comes only to those who have mastered the art of thinking clearly. Clarity does not come from thinking more. It comes from thinking less but thinking better. The mind cannot produce sharp thoughts when it is in turmoil, just as muddy water cannot reflect the sky. To think clearly, one must learn the art of stillness. Most people believe that constant activity, constant noise, and constant mental movement equal productivity, but this is one of the greatest illusions of modern life. A restless mind is a clouded mind. It cannot see beyond its own confusion. The person who has trained their mind to be still, even for a few moments each day, begins to experience a kind of quiet power that most people never know exists. In stillness, thoughts settle, emotions calm, and truth rises to the surface on its own without force or struggle. When you step back from the noise of the world, you begin to see how much of your thinking isn't really your own. The opinions of others, the headlines, the arguments, the endless stream of information all blend together to create a fog in the mind. And in that fog, clarity disappears. The only way to clear it is to stop feeding it. Turn off the noise. Step away from the world long enough to hear your own thoughts again. In silence, your mind begins to reorder itself naturally. The clutter falls away, and what remains is simplicity, focus, and calm. These are the conditions in which true understanding is born. Every great idea, every timeless decision, every revelation of genius has come from a mind at rest, not a mind in panic. Stillness is not laziness. It is the deliberate pause that gives your mind time to think, to evaluate, to choose wisely before acting. When the mind is quiet, it can observe instead of react. It can see the cause behind the effect, the truth behind the noise. A still mind doesn't rush to judgment, doesn't get swept away by fear or excitement, and doesn't mistake motion for progress. It recognizes that clarity is never found in haste. The wise know that a few moments of quiet reflection can prevent years of wasted effort. The untrained rush forward, acting on emotion and confusion, and then wonder why their results are uncertain. To think clearly, one must first learn to wait until the mind is settled. Only then does thought become accurate and effective. Stillness also strengthens perception. When your mind is calm, you begin to notice details that were invisible before. You listen more carefully, observe more deeply, and think more deliberately. In stillness, you begin to understand that most of life's problems are not as complicated as they seem. They only appear that way because of the chaos within. Once the noise fades, solutions reveal themselves effortlessly. The mind does not need to be forced into clarity. It only needs to be allowed to become still enough to see things as they are. The truth is always simple, but it can only be seen through a quiet mind. To cultivate stillness, create moments each day when you do nothing but observe, sit in silence. Breathe deeply. Let thoughts come and go without clinging to them. At first, it will feel difficult, even uncomfortable, because the mind has grown addicted to stimulation. But with time, it will obey. Gradually, you'll begin to sense the separation between you and your thoughts. You'll notice that peace does not come from fixing everything around you, but from quieting what's within you. The clearer the mind becomes, the more peaceful it feels. The more peaceful it feels, the more intelligent it becomes. A mind trained in stillness becomes more efficient. It wastes no energy on unnecessary worry, no time on unimportant things. It doesn't chase after every distraction because it recognizes that clarity is more valuable than speed. In every field of life, business, relationships, creativity, leadership, the ability to remain calm under pressure separates the exceptional from the ordinary. The calm mind thinks clearly while others panic. It makes decisions with confidence while others hesitate. It sees opportunities that others overlook because it is not blinded by fear or emotion. Stillness is not an escape from life, it is preparation for it. When the mind is quiet, it aligns thought with purpose, emotion with control, and action with precision. It allows you to move through life with a kind of steady assurance that cannot be shaken by external events. The storms may come, but the person who has trained their mind in stillness stands firm. The clarity born from silence becomes their compass, their strength, and their unshakable advantage. The mind cannot produce clarity when it is constantly polluted with useless information, idle chatter, and negative influences. Just the body becomes unhealthy when fed junk food. The mind becomes confused when fed low-quality thoughts. To think clearly, you must become selective about what you allow to enter your consciousness. Every book you read, every conversation you engage in, every image you watch, and every sound you listen to either sharpens or dulls your thinking. Most people never stop to question what they are consuming mentally. They spend hours absorbing gossip, meaningless content, and fear-filled news, and then wonder why they feel anxious, distracted, and unclear. The mind is a reflection of what it absorbs. To train it to think clearly, you must feed it with ideas that strengthen it, not poison it. The law of input and output is unchanging. Whatever goes in must come out in some form. If you fill your mind with confusion, your thoughts will be confused. If you fill it with order and purpose, your thoughts will reflect clarity. That is why it is essential to guard your mind as carefully as a gardener guards his soil. The gardener knows that if he allows weeds to take root, they will choke the life from his plants. In the same way, if you allow negative, trivial, or destructive influences to take hold in your mind, they will overwhelm the seeds of clarity and creativity. You become what you think about, but what you think about depends on what you allow inside. Every influence has a cost. Every piece of information carries an effect. A wise person chooses what to expose their mind to with the same care. They choose the food they eat. To feed your mind properly, you must seek out material that uplifts, challenges, and enlightens you. Read books that expand your understanding instead of those that waste your time. Listen to voices that inspire growth rather than those that feed fear or envy. Engage in conversations that stimulate thought and deepen your insight, not those that drain your energy or breed negativity. A mind nourished with wisdom, knowledge, and purpose becomes calm and confident. It sees patterns others miss, solutions others overlook, and truths others ignore. Clarity is the result of feeding your mind with what is pure, useful, and constructive. The danger of poor mental diet lies in its subtlety. You may not notice its effects immediately, but over time, the accumulation of low-quality thoughts creates mental fog. You begin to lose focus. Decisions become harder, motivation weakens. You start doubting yourself without knowing why. This is the consequence of allowing the wrong influences to shape your inner world. Just as one meal cannot make a person healthy, one moment of clarity cannot transform a cluttered mind. It is the repeated, consistent nourishment of the right ideas that creates lasting transformation. That is why daily discipline is essential. Feed your mind with truth every day. Replace noise with knowledge. Replace distraction with direction. Replace gossip with growth. Your surroundings play a powerful role in this process. The people you associate with are part of your mental diet. Their attitudes, values, and behaviors either raise or lower your level of thought. If you spend time with those who complain, criticize, and see only problems, your mind begins to mirror that negativity. But if you surround yourself with thinkers, dreamers, and doers, people who speak of ideas, not of others, your thoughts begin to elevate naturally. The company you keep becomes the environment of your mind, and the environment determines the quality of its output. Technology, too, must be handled with discipline. The endless stream of images and opinions can drown your original thinking. The more time you spend reacting to the noise of the world, the less time you spend reflecting on your own purpose. Silence and solitude are the antidotes. They cleanse the mind of clutter, allowing space for clarity to grow. Disconnect from the endless input long enough to hear your own thoughts again. In that quiet space, you begin to realize how much of your thinking was borrowed, how much was reactive, and how little was truly your own. A mind fed with purpose becomes powerful. It no longer chases distraction because it has tasted the richness of focus. It no longer seeks entertainment because it has found fulfillment in understanding. Every thought becomes intentional, every idea purposeful. This is the reward of feeding your mind with quality. Over time, your mental diet shapes not only your thoughts, but your destiny. The clearer your input, the clearer your vision becomes, and the more precisely your life begins to reflect that clarity. The untrained mind accepts every thought as truth, every opinion as fact, and every emotion as reality. It drifts from one belief to another, swayed by impulse, assumption, and fear. To think clearly, one must learn to question their own thoughts. Most people never do. They assume that because a thought appeared in their mind, it must be valid. But thoughts are not facts, they are possibilities, interpretations, reflections of past experiences, and sometimes echoes of what others have planted within us. The difference between confusion and clarity lies in the ability to step back and examine what the mind is saying instead of automatically believing it. The mind can be wrong. It can exaggerate, distort, and deceive, especially when influenced by emotion. The person who trains themselves to question their thoughts begins to separate truth from illusion, logic from reaction, and reason from emotion. Every thought carries a feeling, and every feeling tries to convince you that it is real. But emotion often clouds perception. A fearful mind exaggerates danger, an angry mind distorts justice, and an envious mind sees unfairness everywhere. To think clearly, you must learn to pause before accepting any conclusion. Ask yourself simple but powerful questions. Is this thought true? What evidence supports it? Is it based on fact or on fear? What else could be true? By doing this, you begin to regain control over the narrative in your head. Instead of being led by thoughts, you begin to lead them. Clarity begins when you stop identifying with every passing emotion and start reasoning through it. This practice requires courage, because questioning your thoughts often means challenging your own beliefs. Many people cling to what they believe simply because it feels safe, not because it's true. But truth is discovered only through the willingness to doubt, to investigate, to admit that you might be wrong. A clear mind is not one that knows everything. It is one that constantly seeks to know better. It treats every belief as temporary, every idea as open to refinement. It values truth more than comfort. When you learn to think this way, you begin to see the world not as you fear it to be or wish it to be, but as it actually is. That perspective brings a kind of strength that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Questioning your thoughts also means recognizing patterns that no longer serve you. Much of what passes through your mind each day is repetition. Old habits of thinking that were learned long ago. These mental habits shape how you see yourself, others, and the world around you. Some of them may have been useful once, but now only limit you. To think clearly, you must be willing to update your thinking the same way a craftsman sharpens his tools. Examine your assumptions, test your conclusions, replace outdated beliefs with better ones. This process never ends because the mind, like any tool, deals with disuse and confusion. Reflection keeps it sharp. A powerful way to train this clarity is to write your thoughts down and look at them objectively. When words are on paper, they lose their emotional grip. You can see them as they are, stripped of intensity. What once felt absolute begins to look partial. What seemed overwhelming begins to look manageable. This simple act turns emotional noise into structured thought. It transforms confusion into understanding. The more often you do this, the more disciplined your mind becomes. It learns not to jump to conclusions, not to act out of fear, not to mistake a temporary feeling for permanent truth. Another key to clear thinking is understanding that not every thought requires action. The mind produces endless noise, but not all of it deserves attention. Most thoughts are like clouds passing across the sky. They appear, change shape, and disappear without consequence. When you learn to observe them without reacting, you begin to notice which thoughts are worth keeping and which should be dismissed. This practice separates wisdom from noise. You conserve mental energy for what truly matters, and your decision-making becomes faster and more precise. A clear mind operates like a skilled editor, cutting away what's unnecessary, refining what's useful, and polishing what remains. It doesn't try to control every thought, only to understand them. It doesn't suppress emotion, only interprets it correctly. It sees thoughts as raw material for understanding, not as commands to obey. When you learn to question your thoughts this way, confusion begins to fade naturally. What remains is order, precision, and confidence, the natural qualities of a mind trained to think with clarity and depth. The world today is full of noise, distractions, and endless stimulation, and in that constant motion, the ability to focus has become rare. Most people live with scattered attention, jumping from one idea to another, from one screen to the next, never holding a single thought long enough for it to mature into clarity. To think clearly, you must learn to focus on what truly matters and remove what does not. The mind cannot work efficiently when divided among too many things. Just as sunlight passing through a magnifying glass can ignite fire only when concentrated, the mind ignites understanding only when it is focused. Without focus, even the most intelligent mind becomes dull. With focus, even an ordinary mind becomes extraordinary. The first step in developing focus is to recognize how easily attention can be stolen. Every notification, every unnecessary conversation, every piece of meaningless entertainment is designed to pull your thoughts away from the essential and into the trivial. Each small distraction weakens mental discipline and fragments clarity. You cannot think clearly about anything if your mind is constantly shifting. To focus, you must become deliberate about your attention. You must decide what deserves your time, what contributes to your growth, and what can be ignored without loss. The mind will always try to wander. That is its nature. But just as a muscle grows stronger with repetition, the power of focus grows each time you bring your attention back to what matters. Focus also demands that you know your priorities. Without clear priorities, the mind wastes its energy on things that have no lasting value. It's not enough to want to focus. You must know what to focus on. Write down your most important goals. Define what truly moves your life forward. Then align your thoughts, actions, and time with those priorities. When you live with a sense of direction, distractions lose their power because your attention has purpose. You no longer chase every opportunity or idea that crosses your path because you understand that clarity comes from depth, not variety. One well-thought-out idea acted upon is worth more than 1,000 half-formed ones abandoned halfway. Distractions are not only external, they are also internal. The greatest source of mental noise often comes from within, from worry, doubt, fear, and indecision. The unfocused mind tries to think about everything at once and ends up thinking clearly about nothing. To regain focus, you must quiet the inner chatter. Give your full attention to one thing at a time. When you work, work fully. When you rest, rest completely. When you listen, listen with your whole being. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your attention. Scattered attention produces scattered results. Focused attention produces mastery. There is also a discipline in learning to say no. Every yes you give to something unimportant is a no to something vital. Most people confuse business with progress. They fill their schedules with endless tasks but never make meaningful advancement toward their purpose. A focused person understands that time is limited and energy is sacred. They protect both by refusing to be pulled into the unessential. Simplicity becomes their greatest strategy. They know that by removing clutter, mental or physical, they create space for clarity to flourish. The environment in which you think also shapes your focus. A disorganized space breeds a disorganized mind. Create surroundings that encourage concentration. Keep your workspace clean, your thoughts ordered, and your goals visible. The mind adapts to the space it occupies. When your environment supports calm and structure, your thoughts begin to reflect the same order. But when you allow chaos to surround you, clarity becomes harder to find. The smallest acts of order, tidying a desk, organizing a plan, structuring your day, are acts of respect toward your mind. They prepare to think more deeply and see more clearly. Focus is not something that happens by accident. It is the product of conscious effort repeated daily. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen your ability to think clearly. Every time you commit your full attention to one thing, you train your mind to operate at a higher level. Over time, your thoughts become sharper, your decisions quicker, your understanding deeper. The world begins to slow down in your perception even when it moves fast around you. You begin to see the patterns others miss, the opportunities others overlook, the truths others rush past. That is the quiet reward of focus, a state of mind where clarity becomes natural, where confusion fades, and where thought becomes powerful because it is undivided. Clear thinking is not something achieved once and kept forever. It is a discipline that must be practiced daily. The mind, left unattended, drifts toward disorder. It begins to clutter itself with doubts, fears, assumptions, and distractions, and over time confusion becomes the default state. To think clearly, you must train the mind as you would train the body, through consistent, deliberate effort. Mental discipline is not about suppressing thoughts, it is about mastering them. It means observing them without judgment, choosing them with intention, and directing them with purpose. A disciplined mind is calm under stress, sharp in judgment, and steady in direction. It does not react impulsively to emotion or circumstance, because it has been trained to think before it moves. The first act of mental discipline is awareness. Most people live unaware of what their minds are doing. Thoughts come and go unchecked, forming habits that shape behavior unconsciously. Awareness interrupts this process. When you observe your own thinking, you create a distance between yourself and the thought. That distance gives you choice, the power to decide whether a thought deserves attention or dismissal. The person who watches their thoughts begins to control them. The person who never does becomes controlled by them. Awareness is the foundation of all mental clarity because it transforms thought from an automatic process into a conscious one. Discipline also means consistency. A single day of focus will not create clarity any more than one workout creates strength. The mind must be trained repeatedly until order becomes its natural state. This means setting aside moments each day to reflect, to think, to review your actions and motivations. It means noticing where your attention goes and gently bringing it back to what matters. Each act of redirection strengthens the muscle of focus. Over time, the wandering mind learns to obey direction, the impulsive thought loses power, and calm replaces chaos. The more disciplined your mind becomes, the more energy you have for what truly matters, because you no longer waste it on confusion or conflict. Mental discipline is also about emotional control. Emotion clouds perception more quickly than anything else. Anger distorts logic, fear narrows vision, excitement exaggerates importance. A disciplined mind does not deny emotion but learns to interpret it correctly. It observes emotion as information, not command. When you can feel without being ruled by feeling, you become free to think with clarity. You begin to act from principle, not reaction. You see events as they are, not as your emotions paint them. This calm objectivity gives you power in every situation, because it allows you to choose your response instead of being driven by impulse. Routine strengthens discipline. Every structured habit you keep builds order into your thinking. Rising at the same hour, reviewing your goals, reading something uplifting, spending a few minutes in reflection. These small, steady acts teach the mind that it lives by command, not by chaos. The disciplined person understands that freedom is not the absence of control, but the mastery of it. A free mind is one that can stay steady in uncertainty, because it knows how to think instead of react. Structure gives clarity room to grow, just as a river flows most powerfully when guided by its banks. Mental discipline also requires honesty. You must be willing to confront the truth about your own thinking. Notice where you deceive yourself, where you procrastinate, where you make excuses, and where you let emotion dictate action. Clarity cannot coexist with self-deception. The disciplined mind faces truth directly, no matter how uncomfortable it feels, because truth is the only solid ground for clear thought. When you stop defending your weaknesses and start refining them, your thinking begins to sharpen naturally. Honesty clears away illusions, and once illusions are gone, understanding takes their place. Finally, a disciplined mind learns to rest. True clarity does not come from constant effort, but from balanced effort. Just as the body grows during rest after exercise, the mind becomes sharper after periods of calm and renewal. Rest is not idleness, it is recovery. It allows thoughts to settle, connections to form, and understanding to deepen. A person who balances discipline with rest keeps their thoughts alive and flexible instead of rigid and fatigued. In that balance lies mastery, a mind trained not through force, but through awareness, consistency, honesty, and care.